loss of control of the vessel. That's the terminology that investigators will use, that there's a loss of control and there was an immediate threat to life, which is why they issued the mayday call, which in my professional judgment is absolutely the right thing to do.
Now, one of the key stories today, we've had an update from the US Coast Guard. 6 missing people are presumed dead after that cargo ship brought down a major bridge in the US city of Baltimore. Emergency services in the eastern state of Maryland have called off rescue efforts. We heard from Rear Admiral US Coast Guard Shannon Gilreath, who gave us this update.
So I'd like to announce tonight that based on the length of time that we've gone in this search, the extensive search efforts that we've put into it, the water temperature, that at this point we do not believe that we're going to find any of these individuals still alive. And so this evening at around 7:30, we are going to suspend the active search and rescue efforts. Coast Guard's not going away, none of our partners are going away, but we're just going to transition to a different phase.
And the investigations start, the recovery efforts. This is the Francis Scott Key Bridge. I'm sure you've seen the video footage now. It's more than a mile and a half long, this bridge, and part of a major highway that snapped and plunged into the water extremely quickly after a container ship collided with one of the pillars. Now, we're learning that the ship is reported to have lost power and issued a distress call moments before the crash, and that distress call may very well have saved lives. Well, President Biden said his government's going to cover the entire cost of rebuilding the bridge and getting the port functioning again.
I've directed my team to move heaven and earth to reopen the port and rebuild the bridge as soon as humanly possible. And we're going to work hand in hand with the support of Maryland to support Maryland and whatever they ask for. We're going to work with our partners in Congress to make sure the state gets the support it needs. It's my intention that the federal government will pay for the entire cost of reconstructing that bridge. And I expect the Congress to support my effort. This is going to take some time. The people of Baltimore can count on us, though.
Of course, there are many questions to work out why this happened, what went wrong. Gavin Pritchard is a marine accident investigator who is with us now. Gavin, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
We just heard there from the US Coast Guard saying we move to a different phase. From your sort of experience, what phase have they entered into?
Rosie, could I just start by extending my sympathies to all of those involved in this fatal marine accident? Yes, as you heard, the US Coast Guard has announced tragically that they're assuming that people missing have perished in this accident. So they're now moving really to two things come next. First is to recover the situation. So that'll be to obviously unpick the ship from the bridge and start recovering the situation with both the vessel itself, get that into a safe state, and the bridge. And as we heard yesterday through a number of media announcements, the US National Transportation Safety Board has commenced a large-scale accident investigation to determine what happened.
And at this point, what is the best case sort of theory as to what went wrong?
Well, it's not really appropriate at this stage to speculate, but I think there's been some quite compelling evidence already in the public domain about what happened. There's some good video showing the lights going off and on, and as you've already said, there was a mayday issued. So just from that, you can piece together that the ship appears to have lost propulsion. But it's operating in a very busy port, and there are extensive safety management systems and vessel traffic services, and the ship had pilots on board. So there's a whole range of safety measures in place that are designed to deal with emergencies on ships. So what the investigators will have to do now is piece all that together to determine exactly what happened and why the ship appears to have lost propulsion, and then why the actions taken to manage that situation weren't effective.
What happens on board for you to issue a mayday call, like what we are led to believe happened? There's the port pilots. Tell me about them, what their job is in terms of how they help ships navigate exactly complicated junctions and ports like the port in Baltimore.
Yes, that's right, Rosie. Baltimore is a very large and very busy shipping port, and there are international and national regulations in countries like America that exercise very high degrees of safety management in that environment. And there are lots of provisions and measures in place to operate the port safely. So it's a bit like an airport. Ships are controlled in and out. The pilots are there to give advice to the master and to work with the onboard team to navigate the vessel safely. And then, as I said, there are a number of contingency measures to manage emergencies. So in a port like Baltimore, there'll be a very strict set of guidance, risk assessments, and procedures to operate the port safely.
And what would happen for you to then say, right, we need to issue this mayday call?
Yeah, mayday, in fact, under the international protocols, a mayday is issued by a ship when there is an immediate threat to life. So that is an assessment that's been made by professional mariners on the ship, either the ship's master or the pilots who are on board. And issuing a mayday means that they recognize a situation where there's an immediate threat to life, which, of course, is what has transpired.
Mm.
So they were absolutely right to do that and to warn the shore agencies that the situation was out of control. It is a loss of control of the vessel. That's the terminology that investigators will use, that there's a loss of control and there was an immediate threat to life, which is why they issued the mayday call, which in my professional judgment is absolutely the right thing to do.
How unusual a situation is like this? There's been instances in the past where ships have hit bridges, perhaps not with this kind of scale of consequence, but are there instances like this previously that we can learn from?
Yes, absolutely, Rosie. There have been both blackouts on ships which have been investigated and collisions and heavy contact with fixed structures like jetties and bridges. I mean, two that spring to mind, the UK's Marine Accident Investigation Branch, where I worked for many years, investigated the grounding of a ship called Clonlee in 2011. That was a ship that had a full blackout, loss of propulsion and loss of control, and ran aground before the crew could restore power. That happened in the River Tyne. And in 2007, actually, in America, in San Francisco, there was a container ship very similar to Dali that collided with a bridge. On that occasion, the bridge was undamaged, but the ship was badly damaged and holed where there was a fuel tank, and that resulted in the spillage of about 56,000 gallons of fuel oil. So there are previous accidents, and the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, their priority at the moment is gathering evidence and gathering perishable evidence, but of course they will look back at previous accidents and make sure that there's a sort of narrative to prevent this happening again.
Of course. You talk about sort of gathering evidence. What's the voyage data recorder? A bit like a plane's black box. There's one on the ship. What information, if that's retrieved, will that be able to give investigators?
Yeah, so all ships the size of Dali are required by international law to carry a voyage data recorder. As you say, that's exactly the same as a black box on an aircraft. That records all the key pieces of information on the bridge, the navigational information, engineering information, and it has an audio recorder on the bridge as well, which will capture all the things that were said. So that's absolutely key. And there are two agencies who would be entitled to access that. Singapore, who's the flag state or state of registry, and obviously the American NTSB will be getting that. But that's just the first part of the immediate journey. There's lots of other perishable evidence that the investigators from NTSB in Singapore will be looking to get. They'll need to interview key people, and they'll also be looking to get all the information from the Port Authority as well as the ship.
The final thing, Gavin, is obviously this port is a key central place for trade. It's going to take a long time to take, the recovery efforts and then at some point the rebuilding of this bridge, which we've heard the president said will be paid for by the country. How long does an investigation like this take?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's huge economic consequences to the closure of a port like this. Shipping is a global industry, and a bit like the ship that ran aground and closed the Suez Canal a couple of years ago, this accident is going to have ramifications across the world, really, with trade. It won't be localized to the Baltimore area. It will have a global impact. In terms of your question about how long an investigation like this takes, I mean, typically, I would have thought between 1 and 2 years, but the lead investigating authority, which is the American National Transportation Safety Board, may well issue safety recommendations earlier if they see things that need to be addressed in a shorter timescale. But it'll take a long time. It'll be very, very forensic and very thorough, and their objective is to identify all the technical and operational issues, both ashore and afloat, that resulted in this tragic accident in order to prevent that happening again. But I wouldn't see anything realistically inside a year in terms of the investigation.
Gavin, thank you very much. Gavin Pritchard, marine accident investigator, talking us through exactly what's going to happen next in terms of working out why this ship supposedly lost power. Of course, there'll also be investigations into the integrity of the bridge. And we've heard quite a lot about that on Times Radio already this morning.